I think it's widely accepted now that it's worth feeding your garden birds all year round to sustain the populations and the diversity of the birds that will visit your garden. You can do that by choosing different bird feeders which contain different feeds. These will attract a variety of garden birds, and there's actually different foods that you can use at different times of the year. In this video I'm going to show you which bird feeders I use in my garden to attract the birds, including one that attaches to my large window where I can sit indoors and watch the birds feeding outside. I'm going to cover the importance of cleaning your feeders regularly through the year, and also the importance of providing water with a bird bath or a saucer of water somewhere for birds to drink and bathe. And lastly, I'll take you on a tour of my garden to show you how I create habitats for birds and wildlife, including places to shelter and nest, and garden plants to provide fruits and berries for the birds to feed on. But let's start with feeders. This 2-in-1 feeder has got peanuts on one side, great for attracting blue tits, great tits and so on, and seeds on the other. So this is a good feeder to leave up in your garden right the way through the year. You can get a wide range of seed feeders too. This one, which has got 4 different feeding ports, each with a little perch, will hold just a general bird food seed mix. But you can get other feeders which you could use for perhaps sunflower hearts or niger seeds and so on. And those different foods will bring in and attract different birds into your garden. Peanuts are a great all year round food for things like blue tits that can peck at the seeds through the wire mesh on front of the bird feeder. Of course, these will attract squirrels as well, and squirrels can actually sometimes gnaw through wire. So if squirrels are a problem in your area, perhaps invest in a squirrel-proof bird feeder. This 2-in-1 bird feeder, got peanuts on one side, and I can put some bird seed in the other. It just flows down through the feeder, and the little tray at the bottom, which has got some drainage holes in it, will hold some of the seed. So it will attract a few different birds to feed from this one feeder. There'll be blue tits, sparrows, finches, a host of other birds too. Now, this bird seed mix I'm using today has got a lot of different seeds in it. The packet tells me it's got whole wheat seeds, red dari, kibbled maize, some black sunflower seeds you can see in there, some white millet, and some soya oil mixed in as well. So it's got a range of different seeds and nutrients. You can get bird seed mixes as well which don't leave much litter and rubbish around when the birds feed on it, so it's cleaner to use on patios. But this is a really good general feed to use, and I'll put this in my feeders all year round. Just to keep the feeders regularly topped up with your favourite bird seed mix, and hopefully it will attract more birds into your garden. There's such a range of feeders that you can get hold of, and at different times of year, as I mentioned before, you can feed birds different foods. For the winter months, when birds need high energy bird food, you can go for these fat suet based bird seed mixes. This one is in half a coconut shell, and I can just literally hang this onto my bird feeder to bring in the birds. Or you can get a variety of others which you can fill with just these fat balls and hang this up to bring in other birds which will rely on the high energy that they need during those colder winter months. But don't leave these fat ball feeders up through the spring into the summer months when you've got birds nesting around your garden, because it has been said that these fat based foods are not good for feeding young chicks. So remove these when birds are nesting, put these away for the summer, and just leave out your seed mixes instead. I do hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel by clicking the button below. There's plenty more inspiring videos on my channel, Adam's Gardening Guides. Thank you. Now, I've positioned my bird feeders quite close to the house. I've got a lovely picture window and it's lovely watching the birds feeding throughout the year. But if you're lucky, you could get one of these bird feeders which has got suckers on it, which are attached to the window of the house. And over time, the blue tits and robins and some other birds have got confident enough to fly from here onto the window to feed from these bird feeders. So if you want to try and bring the birds and the bird antics even closer to you to enjoy when you're sitting indoors, try getting one of these window bird feeders to install. It's usually worth getting the birds used to feeding closer and closer and closer proximity to the property. So if you've never fed the birds before, perhaps position your bird feeders somewhere safe in the garden and gradually move them closer. I've got these hooks that push into the ground which I can hang the bird feeders on, and then gradually you can move the food itself and then position this right up on the window of your house, so the birds can feed from the feeder and you can enjoy watching them while you're comfortable inside during the cold winter months. Now, ground feeding birds like blackbirds feed on the seed which gets spilled out of your feeders when other birds are feeding from them, but you can scatter some bird seed mix on the ground as well, and a lot of the ground feeders, particularly the blackbirds, will love that. Now, bird feeders should be thoroughly cleaned several times through the year. Not only do they build up dirt and debris from the old food in the feeder itself, but birds could be transmitting diseases from one bird to another. So fill yourself a bucket of hot water, put some disinfectant in it if you want. You can rinse the feeders thoroughly afterwards as well to rinse off any disinfectants that's on there, but really take them apart. Wear rubber gloves if you want, just be careful of your own hygiene as well, and give the whole feeder a really good wash inside and out. It's important that you really clean off all of the old food debris and make sure that you're always putting back a dry, clean bird feeder filled with fresh seed. Any old seed can be tipped away, but the hygiene of garden birds is essential, trying to keep them healthy. So keeping your bird feeders regularly cleaned is an important part of maintaining the health of your wildlife garden. As well as food, the other thing birds need is water. Somewhere to bathe, somewhere to drink, somewhere to clean their feathers and so on. And I've got a bird bath in my garden which I can keep topped up with water right through the year. In the winter months, when the weather is cold and freezing, ice will form on your bird bath, so it's worth going out first thing in the morning with a kettle of boiling water and melting the ice on the bird bath so there's water for the birds to drink. If you haven't got space for a bird bath, just get yourself a big plant saucer and top this up with water instead. You can put this on your patio, somewhere around the garden for the birds to be able to drink and bathe from. Regularly empty out and scrub out the bird bath as well to keep it as clean as possible. I don't tend to use any chemicals, but I give it a thorough scrub, tip out any of the old water and debris in there just to make sure that it keeps clean. If you want, you can sterilise the bird bath with a kettle of boiling water just to make sure you kill off any algae or germs which might be lurking, but give it a really good clean, rinse it out and then top it up with fresh water. As well as feeding your birds, there's a lot you can do in your own gardens to create habitats which the birds can nest in, shelter and also feed on. And in my own garden I've tried to cover any walls or fences I've got with plants, things which will provide some shelter for the birds to delve into to escape from cats or predators, somewhere they can roost at night, And there are a number of plants which you can grow which will provide fruits and berries for the birds to feed on. I've got cotoneasters grown along some of my fences. You could grow pyracantha or firethorn, which has berries in a variety of colours from reds to yellows and orange. You can grow holly, which will produce berries on the female forms for the birds to tuck into during those colder winter months. This little area of fence has got a trio of plants growing up. A lovely variegated euonymus, which will stay in leaf throughout the year. It's an evergreen shrub. Mixed in with that, I've got a berry-bearing Cotoneaster horizontalis to provide the bees with flowers to feed on earlier in the year, and for the birds to feed on the berries during the autumn months. And there's some ivy mixed in there as well. So try and create these little planting habitats for the birds to use throughout the year. Big, bold shrubs like this hydrangea create a nice habitat for birds and other creatures to jump into and shelter. And this has got a nice Clematis verticilla clambering up into the holly behind, and the wall surrounding this part of the garden is covered with ivy. Ivy is a really valuable evergreen climber. At this time of year in the autumn, I've got some flowers developing which the late flying insects will be able to feed on, but I find that earlier on in the year my holly covering this wall is a really valuable nesting site for sparrows and blackbirds. So try and create combinations of shrubs around your garden that provide these little mini habitats which the birds and wildlife will really value throughout the year. Holly is a really valuable evergreen shrub. It carries berries in the autumn, flowers early in the year which the bees can feed on. You can use holly just as a freestanding shrub or even as a hedging plant around your garden. Lots of shrubs like this dogwood will lose its leaves, but the evergreen shrubs like the Danae racemosa below, or round here the lovely Choicea tenata, giving you a second flush of flowers in the autumn, will remain evergreen throughout the year. Not only do shrubs provide little sheltering places for the birds, but then grow trees and taller plants like the cornus behind, which will provide some places for the birds to perch, and then they can check that the coast is clear and fly on down from these places to explore your garden, delving around in the borders to search out for pests and slugs and snails and other bugs and creatures, and make their way onto the bird table to feed or into the bird bath to drink. So all of these little areas of ground cover perennials, of shrubs, of small trees are all useful for creating these garden habitats which will enrich your garden with wildlife value. As well as having an expanse of lawn, which again I find a very useful habitat for birds. You'll find them pecking over the lawns throughout the year, especially the green woodpeckers, which will be feeding for ants and ants' eggs. I've planted up some raised beds just outside the back of my house, outside the patio door, so I've got a lovely view of this raised ericaceous bed throughout the year, filled with a mix of rhododendrons and camellias which will be in flower during the spring. I've got hydrangeas in here. I've got a clematis growing up through those shrubs as well, and this lovely mix of evergreen plants, of shrubs, the golden yew in the centre of this bed. These evergreens are a nice sheltered habitat, and I'll find the sparrows and dunnock jumping around in this bed, sheltering and coming out to feed on the bird feeders throughout the year.